Hi everyone, Sid here, back in the car with another improv journal entry. I have two shows to talk about, and as a matter of fact, I have so much to say that I am going to split this into two entries. One of the scenes that I participated in on Sunday had so much that it deserves its own entry. So, I had two shows, as I just mentioned. I did the Sunday Night Improv on Sunday, and Waterworld 2 performed at Art Machine on Tuesday. So what was really cool about this Sunday is I had the honor of being a participant in Gorilla for the first time. So yeah, it wasn't the usual Survivor. The way Gorilla works is the players take turns directing scenes, and then the audience votes on whether the scene was good or bad. It's really an X or a check mark. That's it. And the director is the one who is evaluated. So no matter what the players did, it's all on the director. So that was really cool. What I like about Sunday show in particular is that I got to flex a muscle, which I've known for a while that I'm extremely gun shy with regards to walking onto other people's scenes. So I got to flex that muscle a bit. Not as much as I would have liked, but it was interesting anyway. I got to play a pool guard, and something that I was really entertained by myself with is Angela directed a scene that was basically a Tony Awards viewing party with some kind of sexual tension between the host and one of the female guests. And as I jokingly said during intermission, I don't know anything about the Tony Awards, but I do know enough about trying to make moves at a party and being cock-blocked by the circumstances. So at one point they were like about to kiss, and I walked on and said, "Hey, I'm here. I brought some garlic bread and some sardines," and shit like that. So that was really fun. Now let me talk about the two scenes that I actually did direct. One of them was basically the premise, which is also on me. I was inspired by the fact that it was F1 weekend, so I wanted a scene where players were playing the pit crew of one of the stables in the F1. And honestly, the scene was okay. I thought that I was going to get the first fail of the night, but there was a bit more people that voted it art, as in that they liked the scene. So I got the check mark for that one. However, something that I realized in retrospect, again, this is my first time ever directing in front of a paying audience. So, and something to know about the Gorilla format is that when a theater chooses to do Gorilla, the players themselves tend to be stronger players, which is one of the reasons why I was honored just to be in the roster. However, something about strong improvisers is they tend to make the right decisions often. And for the director, that means that it's pretty easy to direct. Sometimes, depending on what happens, you don't even need to say anything at all. You just set the premise and then watch the hilarity ensue. However, in retrospect, I got the feeling that the people who were in the scene weren't particularly inspired by the suggestion of an F1 pit crew, and that being the fact that I was a little gun shy with regards to directing the scene. It felt a little stale, like Nick walked on as like the F1 pilot during early in the scene, and when he drove off, he basically walked off stage, and I saw him go all the way to the back of the theater. And in my mind, I'm like, it's a circular track. He's gonna have to come back. And I was too shy to tell him right there, don't go too far. We're gonna need you later. And lo and behold, Coco and Alain referred to him, and he ended up having to sneak back to the front of the theater anyway. So the other scene that I directed, I'm really proud of this one because it was it's an interesting opportunity to just be me. As you might know, I'm a geek, and I wanted a time travel scene. So I asked the audience, like, if there was something, what do you wish that you could go back in time and warn your younger self about? And the suggestion ended up being French boyfriends. So what was nice about that is, as I just said, the players tend to be strong. They tend to make the right decision. However, I did have the experience of my first scene. I did have the experience of my first scene under my belt, so to speak. So when I saw Mariana walk backstage to prepare to be future Coco, and Nazir was the deadbeat French boyfriend. And honestly, I didn't have to do much during that scene for the aforementioned reasons. However, I did have the foresight to give the scenes a little nudge here and there. There was at the beginning during the exposition, there was a nice window for future self to enter. However, the door opened and closed right away and it was gone. So the next time I saw a nice opportunity for future self to enter, and I think it was when Nazir proposed, hey, maybe we should move in together. I didn't want to let him miss that one, so I screamed, enter the future self, right there. And the other time that I nudged the scene, because it ended up being a montage of just jumping into the future and seeing what her life would be like if she stayed with him. And there was a scene where they met the family, and it went so bad that Coco's family disowned her. And it felt like that particular segment had come to a close. So I just said, jump to 5 years later, you're down in the dumps and things are a mess. And then they found an ending from there. And that was a really cool experience. Do I have? Yeah, actually, I'll mention this because there was another scene that I played in, which was also directed by Angela. And the premise was orphans jumping on boxcars and things like that. Now, what was challenging for me is that I didn't know. I thought I knew what a boxcar was, but I realized as we were setting up the scene that I didn't. I thought, in my mind, a boxcar was a soapbox. So I set up the box in a diagonal way, expecting us to sit on it like we were riding a horse, facing that way. And then I see Mariana sit on it like it was a bench. So I kind of sat down with her, obviously, that way. And, due to that initial confusion, and I learned very quickly that we were basically train hopping. We were hitchhiking on trains. So due to that initial conclusion, it did take a while for me to get my feet under me. I was kind of winging it because, I thought I was preparing to zig, but it turned out I was preparing to zag. But once I got my feet under me, it ended up being a nice story, and I got to have a pretty nice emotional reaction. It wasn't as big as I would have liked, but it was nice. And what was nice about that moment was when basically Mariana admitted that she had considered eating me but decided not to, and we had already established that she taught me how to survive in the streets and stuff like that. So I kind of was like, oh my God, thank you so much for not eating me and stuff like that. And she went, oh my God, are you becoming soft? You need to be tough. And what I loved about that moment was I got to play one way but speak as if I was playing another. I was like, no, I'm tough. I could make it. that kind of stuff. That was really cool. And I enjoyed the process of digging out of the initial confusion when I learned the hard way that I didn't know what a boxcar was at that time. So now let's move on to the show on Tuesday with Waterworld 2. We did Art Machine. I thought it was a really good set. That's not entirely true. I thought it was a really good set considering, because we basically didn't warm up. We hadn't practiced that much recently. So considering the fact that we were coming in cold, I thought it was a really good set. I have two main disappointments with regards to that set. My first one was the funniest stuff was at the beginning and the lamest stuff were at the end, which is kind of the opposite of what you want. So there's that. And the other thing is, actually, I'll get to that one. So the suggestion was Porsche. And the question that I asked to get that was, what is something that you've always wanted but that you would never buy for yourself? And when we started the scene, when we started the set, it was a long form set. It was 10 minutes. And it's difficult to do a really satisfying long form montage in that amount of time. But there was something, though. We, as I've mentioned before, we're trying to focus on playing game of the scene. And I think it's a really useful and fun skill to build. However, we're all at our core narrative players. And I think, as I hope I've mentioned on this channel, it's very difficult to do narrative and game of the scene at the same time. So when you go in one direction, it becomes difficult to do the other. The first scene of that set was Carlos and Nazir doing chemistry in chemistry class, and Carlos was like, "Oh, it's really cool learning how to make all these potions," and Nazir was like, "You mean chemistry, right?" And Carlos said, "Oh yeah, we're making magic chemistry potions." And I got nervous seeing this because it wasn't clear to me whether it was just the characters that were disagreeing or whether or not Nazir and Carlos were trying to come to an agreement on what reality is. So seeing this, I didn't want to let that linger for too long. So I jumped in and I resolved the issue. So I tagged Nazir out and I played Carlos's dad, basically saying, "Oh, the world is magic. Never let anyone take away your belief in magic." So basically, I was seeing this potential disagreement between the players. I stepped in and resolved it by saying, Nazir is right, Carlos just has a shitty dad. And it ended up being a really fun sequence. It was my favorite sequence of the night, where I got to later be... basically, Carlos was trying to get onto an amusement park ride, but he was too short to step on. And I was like, we see his father in a thought bubble. If you believe, you can do anything. If you believe, you can do anything. And then I stepped off. And later on, he got shrunken down to miniature size. And I stepped on as the carny who was running that ride. And I was like, I'm sorry, you got to be this short to step on this ride. You're too tall. And a nice element of background is Will got on his knees and walked across the stage to just be short enough to get on the ride and stuff. That was fun. And what was fun about it for me as well is that I got the opportunity to do ghosting, because being the carny, basically denying him entrance to this miniature ride in Microland, where he was now. I stepped across to the other side of him and I played the dad again, going, if you believe, you could do anything. And then I went back in front of him again and said, so yeah, you're way too tall to enter, I can't do anything. And I even managed to do a nice little callback, and I'm grateful for Will for correctly sweeping the scene once I said that. So Carlos offered me as a bribe a miniature Matchbox Porsche. And then I looked at it and I was like, I've always wanted a Porsche, but I would never buy one for myself, which I thought was a nice, clever callback. And then we swept that. And then some kind of the sequence with a car salesman ensued. Now, the reason that this fell flat in my eyes was because as it was difficult. Again, I'm new to playing game of the scene. It's difficult for me to identify game and think of game moves. However, I thought that with what they had established, it was Nazir and Will, and with what they had established, there was a good potential. Nazir gets screwed by salesmen who lied to him, and he's gullible. And as I was getting ready to tag Will out and play another salesman, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted some kind of game move like that. As I was getting ready to tag Will out, Nazir went like, hey, wait a minute, I recognize you. You were in another city. Are you following me from town to town? Which is kind of a narrative move, and that made it difficult for me to play the game of the scene from there. So this is an example of how it can be difficult to play game of the scene and tell a story at the same time. And just to be clear, I did the same thing. My story, where I wasn't sure if Nazir and Carlos agreed on what reality was, I went to my first instinct. I solved the issue, but I went narrative. I played Carlos's dad, just basically being a shitty dad and telling him, not telling him the difference between reality and fiction. So I did it too earlier in that same set, and it was difficult to find a game of the scene in that sequence too. It just so happened to be a fun sequence. We found a fun thing to do, which was, you're too short to enter this ride. Here, drink this. And then he shrunk down and got into Microland, and then he was too tall to enter the ride that was there. So yeah, but the equivalent of that wasn't really found in that sequence. However, Carlos did manage to tag in and find something similar to the game that I was thinking of. And then after that bit, I tagged Carlos out again, and I was playing Nazir's friend in free fall, and basically saying, you said this parachute was good, but I just pulled it open and it has a big hole in it. And which leads us to my second disappointment of the night, which was as we were doing this, I figured, it's been long enough. I'm going to deliver the blow line, which is jargon for the last line of the scene, which hopefully gets a laugh, but this is the line that the scene will end on. So as I'm falling to my death with Nazir, I turn to him and I go, sometimes I wonder why I hang out with you. And I wanted to call the lights there, but I didn't. I was gun shy again. And the funny thing is, when Nazir responded with, I know how to find a good deal, the technician cut the lights anyway, which means that I was right in my sense of timing. And had I followed my instinct of calling for the lights when I said that, the end of the set would have been just a little bit tighter. So on that, I will say that the audience did enjoy our set, and I had fun on stage, which is ultimately the most important part of improv, and it leads to consistent results when you have fun for the right reasons. So on that note, thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments below and like and share. If you haven't, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the bell to get notifications, and you'll find links to my social media below. There is one scene that happened on Sunday, which I have a lot to talk about. There's no danger in me forgetting this scene for reasons that'll be clear as I talk about it later in life. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you soon. You take care.